In 1596, a man named Arima Kihei walked into a village in the Japanese province of Harima, nailed a notice to a post, and went to wait. The notice said he was a trained swordsman, that he would fight anyone who wanted to test him, that he had done this before, in other villages, and he had always walked away. He was not expecting a reply. The reply came the next morning, a name, written in the hand of a child. Arima Kihei had never heard that name before. Almost no one had. The boy was 13 years old. His real name was Benosuke. He had no sword. He had never killed anyone. Yet. He didn't come to the duel with a sword either. He came with a stick.
Before we talk about what he did, we need to talk about what he was, because the story of that notice and the name written on it only makes sense if you understand who Benosuke was before he became anyone at all. He was born around 1584 in the province of Harima, the son of a swordsman named Shinmen Munasai, a man described by those who knew him as exceptional with a blade, and almost completely absent as a father. Munasai left. The details are disputed. Some records say he died. Others suggest something closer to abandonment. Either way, by the time Benosuke was 7 years old, his father was gone. What remained was an uncle, a Buddhist monk named Dorin, who ran a small temple 3 kilometers from the village of Hirafuku. Dorin took the boy in, taught him to read, taught him to write, tried, by all accounts, to give him something resembling a calm life inside temple walls. There was one other thing about Benosuke that the records mention almost in passing, as if the historians who wrote it down weren't quite sure what to do with it. He had a skin condition from infancy, something that affected his face and his hands. The historical accounts describe it plainly. It disfigured him, made him look different from other children, made him someone that people noticed and then looked away from. A boy without a father, living in a temple, marked on his skin in a way he couldn't hide. Think about what that does to a child. Not the anger, not the sadness. Those are the emotions we expect, and they're probably there. But underneath those, something else tends to grow in children who are raised on the outside of things. A stillness. A complete indifference to what other people think is supposed to happen next. That is the boy who saw Arima Kihei's notice. Now, Kihei himself. We know very little about him. What the records do tell us is worth noting carefully. He was a wandering swordsman, what the Japanese called a musha shugyo, a warrior on a self-improvement pilgrimage. He traveled from province to province, posting challenges, fighting locals, building a reputation one victory at a time. He practiced the Kashima Shinto-ryu style, a respected school founded by the legendary Tsukahara Bokuden a century earlier. He was not a beginner. He was also, and every source that mentions him agrees on this, arrogant, overly eager, and not especially talented. The kind of man who had won enough fights against ordinary people to believe that was the same thing as being extraordinary. He nailed his notice to the post in Hirafuku-mura, and he waited for someone impressive to reply. What he got was a 13-year-old boy with a cowlick and a wooden staff, and eyes that didn't look afraid of anything. The morning of the duel, Doran arrived at the meeting place first. He had spent the night trying to find a way out of this. His nephew was a child. Kihei was a trained adult swordsman. The math was not complicated. The arrangement was simple. Doran would apologize publicly on behalf of Benosuke. Kihei's honor would be satisfied. The boy would go home. No blood. Doran began to speak. Benosuke did not let him finish. He came through the gate of the dueling area screaming, since a 6-foot wooden staff raised above his head, charging directly at Arima Kihei without stopping, without hesitating, without doing anything that resembled the formal opening of a samurai duel. Kihei drew his wakizashi, his short sword. He struck. But here is the detail that almost no retelling of this story includes. The charge had closed the distance too fast. Kihei's blade and Benosuke's staff, both swinging, arrived at the same moment, and neither landed cleanly. They were too close, chest to chest. The fight had moved inside the reach of both weapons in the first second. And then Benosuke did something that Arima Kihei, trained swordsman, veteran of duels across multiple provinces, had almost certainly never encountered before. He dropped his weapon, Deliberately, he ducked, put his shoulders low, drove them under Kihei's center of gravity, the way a wrestler moves, not a swordsman, and toppled the man headfirst into the ground. Then he reached back down, picked up the staff, and did not stop. The Bushu Denraiki, one of the oldest surviving accounts of Musashi's life, records what followed in plain, unhurried language. Benosuke struck Arima Kihei between the eyes, and then he kept striking, 14 blows. The record says 15. Arima Kihei died vomiting blood. This was not a contest between two swordsmen. This was not a duel in any sense that the word implies. No elegance, no ceremony, no mutual test of skill. This was a 13-year-old boy taking a man apart with a stick in broad daylight in front of witnesses, using a technique that had no name, no school, no tradition behind it, because no tradition had ever considered it necessary to train a person to fight like this. When it was over, every source goes silent. There were witnesses. There is no record of any investigation, no punishment, no consequence of any kind. Because here is the thing about Sengoku Japan that is almost impossible to hold in your mind from the distance of 400 years. Arima Kihei had nailed a public challenge to a post. In the legal and cultural framework of 1596 feudal Japan, that notice was a contract, a formal, witnessed, binding declaration that Kihei accepted full responsibility for any outcome that followed. He had invited this. Benosuke had not committed a crime. He had accepted an invitation. The village went home. Kihei was buried, and a 13-year-old boy walked back to his uncle's temple in a world that had just looked at what he did and called it correct. What do you record about a moment like that? Doran, the uncle, the monk, the man who had spent the morning trying to prevent exactly this, was standing a few feet away when the last blow landed. The records tell us what he did before the duel. They tell us nothing about what he did after. Did he go to the body? Did he go to the boy? Did Benosuke say anything? We don't know. And Musashi himself, who in the last years of his life would write one of the most precise and self-aware documents in the history of Japanese philosophy, never described this moment in emotional terms, not once. In the Book of Five Rings, he references this duel in a single sentence, as a fact, a data point, the first entry in a long list. He does not describe what he felt. He does not describe what happened afterward. He simply moves on to the next duel. There are people who read that and think it means the moment didn't affect him. I think it means the opposite. Benosuke had just discovered something about himself that nobody, not his father who left, not his uncle who prayed, not the village that looked at his scarred skin and looked away, had ever told him. He had discovered that he was capable of this, that when the moment came, something in him had not hesitated, had not flinched, had simply moved, and that whatever that thing was, it was going to define the rest of his life. 2 years after the duel in Hirafukumura, Benosuke gathered his belongings, his furniture, his weapons, his family records. He gave all of it to his sister. He gave her everything. And then he walked out of the village and never came back. Over the next 30 years, Miyamoto Musashi fought his way across Japan. He defeated the Yoshioka school, one of the most respected sword schools in Kyoto, not once but 3 times. The third time, they stopped sending students and started sending assassins, archers, riflemen, an ambush in the dark at the edge of a rice field. Musashi arrived early, watched from the bushes, waited. Then he moved. He defeated Sasaki Kojiro on an island in 1612, arriving late carrying a sword carved from a boat oar, ending it in a single stroke. He fought in 2 civil wars. He survived battles that killed thousands of better-equipped men around him. He never lost, not once. Not in 62 recorded duels across 5 decades of warfare. And if you look carefully at every significant fight of his life, you will find the same pattern. No script, no ceremony, no respect for how a fight was supposed to go. Every time, without exception, Musashi won by refusing to fight the duel his opponent had prepared for. He had learned that at 13, because something in him understood, instinctively, completely before he had words for it, that the purpose of a fight is not to demonstrate skill. The purpose of a fight is to win. In 1645, Miyamoto Musashi was 61 years old. He was dying, likely from lung cancer, living in a cave called Reigondo in the mountains of Kumamoto. He had stopped fighting decades earlier. He had become a painter, a sculptor, a calligrapher, a philosopher. He asked for paper and ink, and he wrote the Book of 5 Rings, a document on strategy, conflict, and the nature of victory that is still read today by military commanders, business leaders, martial artists, and anyone who has ever needed to understand how to move through a world that does not fight by any rules they agreed to. The first sentence he wrote, about his own life in his own hand: I have trained in the way of strategy since my youth, and at the age of 13, I fought a duel for the first time. A stick, a dead man, and a silence that lasted a lifetime.
That's the end of this video. Would you like to see more of it? I hope so. Let me know in the comments.